All right, well, day 4 of UFC 200 Fight Week is officially in the books. The big news on this Friday, July 8th, Joanna Jedrzejczyk walks away still the UFC strawweight champion. She defeats her longtime rival, Claudia Gadelha, via unanimous decision. It was a fantastic fight, a close fight, came down to the 5th round, but again, in the end, Joanna Jedrzejczyk wins a close decision victory. I'm Ariel Helwani in Las Vegas. That is Marc Raimondi. That is Shaun Al-Shatti. We've got a lot to talk about, so strap on your seatbelt. Shaun, let's talk about that main event. Did you score it in favor of Joanna?
I did. I had it tied going into the 5th round, and then I gave that round to Joanna. I was just honestly blown away by her composure. She obviously got down early. The first 2 rounds, she was down. She was getting grounded, and she was getting stifled. And she just came in there and completely took over. It was a snowball. Once she got going, it just did not stop. Her striking it was a clinic for the 3rd round onward. And it was interesting too because you could kind of get a sense that this might happen. After the 1st round, Claudia obviously won it, but you watched her. I mean, she was taking deep, heavy breaths in her corner. She was kind of coming back. She was looking a little labored. Joanna looked fresh as a daisy. She was so fast and her movement was on point. It was utterly spectacular, to be honest.
So, Marc, you're the judging expert. How did you score it? It seemed like most people had it 1st and 2nd round for Claudia, 4th and 5th round for Joanna. The 3rd round was the iffy one.
Right.
How'd you score it?
I had it the same as Shaun. I had a 48-47 for Joanna. The thing that surprised me the most, and I think the right person won, and at the end of the day, that is what is most important, but I was surprised that there were so many 10-8s involved, and all 3 judges gave Joanna 10-8 in the 4th rounds, and 1 judge gave her 10-8 in the 4th round and the 5th round. And that was surprising to me because I thought that she clearly won both of those rounds for sure. I don't think anyone would dispute that, but was there that combination of domination and damage in those rounds to point toward a 10-8? That's how John McCarthy teaches when he does his training for judges. A 10-8 equals the combination of domination and damage. Enough damage that is really tellable. And I'm not sure if that was there. I mean, you can make the argument for sure in the 4th round. 5th round, absolutely not. I don't think in any way. But I think that the right person won. And sometimes with judging, that's all we can ask for.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty clear at this point that Joanna is the best strawweight in the world.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clear that Claudia is the 2nd best strawweight in the world. So obviously she's not going to get an immediate rematch. She's now 0-2 against Joanna. Again, putting you on the spot. But who could be next for Joanna? There doesn't really seem to be a clear-cut #1 contender, right?
To me, the fight that I would look at is Rose Namajunas versus Carolina Kowalski. I believe I pronounced that right, hopefully.
Kovalkiewicz.
Is that how you pronounce it?
That is
I was not even close. But to me, that's the clear #1 contender fight at this point. You're right, though. Claudia Gadelha does seem pretty definitively to be the #2 in this division, and it's going to be interesting to see who can really come up and take that spot. But also, what do you do with her at this point moving forward? She might be in a kind of a Joseph Benavidez type of spot, and that kind of void is a very difficult and frustrating spot for fighters to be.
Yeah, so I also thought it was interesting that the feud maybe on Joanna's end seemed to come to an end, but on Claudia's end did not come to the end. Of course, she was the loser, but I thought they both handled themselves pretty well. In the end, a very entertaining main event, and one that certainly lived up to the hype. At least I thought so. Okay, let's move along to the other big news of the evening. Will Brooks, the former Bellator lightweight champion, successful in his UFC debut. He defeats Ross Pearson via decision, and we've often seen fighters come from other organizations, champions come from other organizations, and not look like themselves. The Octagon jitters get to them, blah, blah, blah. We've heard it time and again. What'd you make of his performance?
It was solid. I think, to your point, guys like Hector Lombard have come into the UFC, their first fight, not looked good. Eddie Alvarez, who we were just talking about 24 hours ago as the new UFC lightweight champion, didn't look all that great in his UFC debut against Cowboy Cerrone. Will Brooks looked good. He looked very solid. He didn't overwhelm anyone. He didn't, light the world on fire tonight against Ross Pearson, but he won a very complete, comprehensive victory, I thought, and I think he's a star, man. I really think he's going to be very, very good for the years to come.
What a year for Will Brooks. He becomes a first-time father. He wins his UFC debut, gets his wish as far as leaving Bellator, and is getting married next week as well. That's an unbelievable 2016 thus far. great promo after his victory, calling out Eddie. They have a history. It's a pretty entertaining history. They were close to fighting, never happened, of course. How far away do you think he is from that discussion?
It's interesting because Marc and I talked about this earlier in the week, and I felt like this fight was going to be closer than people kind of expected it to be, and it ended up being that type of fight. But in that case, I feel like he's maybe 2 fights away. Like in my ideal world, I'd like to give him maybe like a top 8 opponent, and in particular, I really like the idea of a Michael Johnson fight. There's a camp rivalry there, and I think he's like number 8 ranked. That seems like a good measuring stick of where Will Brooks is. And if he does well, and he's very successful in that fight, I'd like to give him a top 3 opponent and just see if that's it, and then give him a title shot if he wins.
I also don't mind the idea of him fighting Michael Chiesa upon returning from his injury.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
All right, I stole your pick. Other notables this evening, how about the return of Gray Maynard, winning his UFC featherweight debut, his first win in around 4 years' time. Very happy for the bully. And again, interesting that his running mate in 3 great fights, Frankie Edgar, is fighting for the belt. He talked about that afterwards, that he used that as motivation, seeing where Frankie is, seeing where Frankie went after those fights and where he went after the fights, and to try to get back to that level as well. The Korean Superboy continues to impress.
Amazing.
Anyone you want to shout out before we move along?
I think that guy right there, Tugo Choi, he knocked out Thiago Tavares, who's really one of the toughest guys in the division at 145, who's been in wars with a lot of the best fighters. Knocked him out with essentially 1 punch, just right hand straight down the middle, folded Thiago Tavares up. That does not happen very often. That dude looks really unassuming, but he is a dangerous man. He is a dangerous man. That guy has got 1 punch knockout power.
Yeah, a very impressive fighter. You want to say something?
Yeah, and the thing that I like about what he did is he knows how to play the game too. Like he knocked him out, and then he kind of called his next shot instantly. And that's not you don't often see that with the Asian fighters either. Sometimes.
What was it?
Well, he asked for Cub Swanson versus Kawajiri winner, which, I mean, I don't know why. I would really like to see that fight ultimately, but I don't know why they would take that. That just seems like a lose-lose for them.
Right.
But it might be hard to book him, to be honest, because if I'm a top 5 featherweight or a top 10 featherweight, I don't want to fight that guy. There's no upside for me.
Yeah, in that market.
I was saying Jeremy Stevens. I was saying
interesting.
That potential matchup.
I like that.
Yeah.
Choi versus Stevens, I think that's
Too soon?
No way.
All right.
Guy's nuking guys. He's murking guys in 1 round, 3 in a row.
That market, a budding one for the UFC, and also don't forget, in around October, the Korean zombie Chan Sung-jung is ready to return. His military duties are up, so all of a sudden, got some interesting names coming out of that part of the world. And of course, we crowned 2 new Ultimate Fighter winners. This was the Ultimate Fighter finale. Anything you want to say? You seeing any prospects out of that show?
I really, really like Tatiana Suarez. That wrestling background combined with, I mean, she's just so athletic and long and rangy, and it seems like she's really crafty with submissions. She had a Darce choke today. I think that the sky is the limit for her. She's 24. I think that she could be right now a top 10 caliber fighter in that 115-pound division.
Wow, I do believe the first Darce choke victory in UFC women's strawweight history. A short history, but notable. Do you share his excitement?
Absolutely, in regards to Tatiana Suarez. And the thing that struck me about the other tough winner, Andrew Sanchez, is it seemed like they did this whole tough season to try to find some new light heavyweight talent, because obviously that division is starved for just young prospects. And it's very telling that the guy who wins the light heavyweight season immediately after winning says, I'm probably going to go down to middleweight, maybe welterweight.
Right.
We're just starved for talent in that division. I don't know where it's going to come from, to be honest.
All right, 2 events down, and now it's time for the biggie. Tomorrow night, Saturday night, it's UFC 200, finally at the T-Mobile Arena. This morning, Friday morning, they held the official weigh-in between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. Pacific time, and wouldn't you know it, it was not without some controversy, a few incidents along the way. It was typical UFC 200 stuff, right? Marc, Shaun, you both were there. Marc, let me start with you. You've been all over this story from day one. Let's start with the new main event, Miesha Tate, the UFC Women's Bantamweight Champion. This fight almost didn't materialize. Explain what happened.
Thought we'd go at least a few hours without any kind of drama, but I was wrong. So the new procedure for weigh-ins is that, at least in Nevada for this week, was that fighters had to weigh in between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. in the Fighter Hotel, which is the Monte Carlo, and that was the window. And everyone weighed in before 9:30, I would say. Pretty much the entire card, except for 3 fighters: Johnny Hendricks, Kelvin Gastelum, Miesha Tate. time kept ticking, and it was 10-10. It was 10 minutes left in that window. Still had 3 fighters to go. So Hendricks came in, missed weight. Gastelum came in, made weight, and right at the buzzer, Miesha Tate checked in at just before 10, hit the scale at 10:02 a.m. And a lot of people were wondering, well, what happens if she didn't make that window? What happens if she was there at 10:15? And the UFC said through a spokesperson that the fight would have been off.
Wow.
The fight would have been off because the scale would have been gone, and then the commission was going to take the scale away. Now, I think that there was going to be some flexibility, and I still find it hard to believe that another co-main event of UFC 200 would be pulled.
Main event. Second main event of the week.
And I think 4th overall or something like that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess. I was kind of like, it felt like a placeholder, but fair enough.
But I still don't think that actually would have happened, but I guess this is one of those things we need to now worry about at these early weigh-ins, because sometimes maybe fighters, that 2-hour window or 3-hour window, whatever it's going to be in that city, maybe that's not enough.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it was actually very compelling being there in the room as we're watching the clock. You need almost like a countdown timer on there. Like,
Yeah.
will she make it in time to get to the fight? It was crazy.
It's all new territory, and it to me suggests that the UFC should probably film these things and stream them in some fashion if it's not going to be on Fox. All's well that ends well for Miesha Tate. She makes the weight. The fight is on. Marc mentioned Johnny Hendricks missing weight once again.
Yeah.
Should this be the end of his days at 170?
I will say that it was very frightening watching Johnny Hendricks this morning. He came out, like Marc said, he came out with almost like 4 minutes left, I think, and he was just shaking. Like, he was trembling. He couldn't sit still. He had to. The commission actually ended up telling him to hold his breath because the scale wouldn't register because he was shaking so much, and he just looked. He looked like a shell of a human. He looked so close to death, and it was genuinely scary.
Wow.
You have to wonder. I mean, this is a guy who has been weight cutting for long before he was even a fighter. He's been in amateur wrestling for a very long time, and he has been struggling with weight cutting for a very, very long time, even in his time as champion. I wonder at what point, like, how much damage has his body taken just being ravaged by these severe weight cuts? He doesn't look like himself anymore, to be honest. And my heart broke for him when they said that he was 0.25 over. I mean, that is such a small amount to miss by, especially after trying so hard. And it seemed like he was just crestfallen when it got announced, and he loses 20% of his purse now. And I mean, he has to probably go to middleweight next, right?
Yeah.
Like he and Gastelum both are guys that are made for a 175-pound division that does not exist.
Yep. And the UFC, I feel at this point, has to put its foot down, doing him a disservice by continuing to book him at 170 pounds. For whatever it's worth, his team is claiming that the trembling is an old wrestling routine to try to be as light as possible. You guys saw it, and you obviously feel otherwise. So those were the two big notable stories to come out of the official weigh-in. Everyone else made weight. Then they held the, I guess, ceremonial weigh-in in front of the crowd. I thought the big story was the Pride of Saskatchewan, Brock Lesnar coming out and doing the old peck routine. Did you see that thing? It was unbelievable. Boom, 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 boom. I mean, it's mesmerizing. I love when he does that. Anyway, we're just hours away now from UFC 200. Running out of storylines here, but guess what? We've got one more video for you guys. It's our UFC 200 preview show, the one you've been all waiting for. And it's going to be pretty special. So that's coming up in a matter of hours. For now, we say goodnight from Las Vegas. Thank you so much for watching day 4 of our coverage. Day 5 coming up Saturday night.